COVID hits all too close to home for a Fairfield family tonight. With their teen in the hospital, they describe the pain she's going through.
Plus, with a new year and new challenges expected, how some schools are looking to minimize COVID impacts inside the classroom. And later,
pinching pennies when they're needed most. I'm Zach Shermley out here in Sun Prairie, where the Rural Volunteer Fire Department is strapped for cash during peak fire season.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Well, as of Friday afternoon, there were 97 active COVID-19 hospitalizations in the state of Montana. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tim McGonigal.
And I'm Hallie Schwinnard. Behind each of those cases, a patient and people who love them. MTN's Tom Wiley shares the story of one such family from Fairfield.
The Yeager family's nightmare started over the weekend when their 14-year-old daughter, Kiana, began showing symptoms.
Kiana was, had a high fever and, just overall lethargic. And Candy and I made the decision to run her into Great Falls there to the clinic. We found out Sunday morning that she'd had the COVID, that she just kept going south on us.
Since then, it's been a blur for the past 6 days. Kiana was flown from Great Falls to Salt Lake City, where she's in the ICU with an enlarged liver, spleen, and gallbladder, low blood pressure, failing kidneys, fluid in her lungs, and heart problems.
It's just been one thing after the next with this deal. We get one thing taken care of, and something else is a problem.
Kiana is a healthy teenager with no underlying conditions, so her case is rare and concerning.
The way it was explained to me is that she's kind of had a reaction to the COVID. Most of us go through, some of us don't even know we got the COVID. Some of us have the squirts and sniffles. Kiana kind of won the lottery on it and got kind of a bad deal.
Kiana is fighting for her life, but there's no one better equipped to fight.
She's a competitor. She's tough, but tender.
Support is poured in from all corners of Montana. Kiana has organized food drives in her community, and a family friend recently set up a Facebook group called Kiana's Biggest Drive. While she fights COVID-19, they invite others to stock the shelves of Montana food banks in her name.
We're sure thankful for all the support from our community and beyond, and we're all fighters here, and I think Kiana's going to whip this deal and be back and flower in her community.
Kiana's condition is improving, but there's no telling what long-term effects lie in her future. Her battle is far from over, but it helps to have an entire state in her corner.
Optimism is built in, and they're going to get her out of there, and she's going to come home.
Tom Wiley, MTN News.
And to learn how to contribute to Kiana's Biggest Drive, you can find the link on our website, krtv.com.
The Cascade County Jail has confirmed its first COVID case. The sheriff says the individual came down with symptoms a few days ago. The medical staff isolated him. His test came back positive yesterday. The City County Health Department, along with Alluvian, are working with the jail medical staff to get other inmates and staff tested. The sheriff says the pod the individual came from has been locked down for quarantine, but they will not say what pod he came from. With that, here's a look at our state's COVID numbers tonight. We added more than 140 new cases. Today, there are currently just over 1,300 active cases. Just under 90 people have died from the coronavirus in Montana, and more than 4,800 people have fully recovered from this virus.
Both Great Falls and Helena Public Schools will welcome students back in the next 2 weeks. Here's MTN's Matt Holzaffel on the specific challenges that one group is gearing up for.
As we inch closer to the start of the school year in Great Falls, district officials anticipate they'll encounter challenges like never before. Though there's one group that will face additional challenges, including some that they've been dealing with since before the pandemic.
For our special education students, these students all have some sort of disability which impacts them in their educational realm, which qualifies them for this. We haven't seen them for 6 months, so for teachers they may have lost more skill than they typically would, may have more medical challenges, as we know for some of our students with mental health needs.
The district's student services administrators have been working to address all of the challenges of returning to school, plus the additional ones that come with special education programs.
We've really had to look at our staffing numbers, look at the needs of the students in these specific classrooms, because they're specially designed for high needs students.
One thing that's being done diversifying the programs that the para-educators will be teaching.
We have ordered more curriculums. We have had a lot more conversations about, students needing additional support, students, needing more small group. They may need more time one-on-one.
At the end of the day, the best that they can hope for is some normalcy.
Our goal is to try to keep it as normal as possible, and so with our plans that we're trying to be proactive with, we're trying to provide something that's consistent for them, that's predictable, that they can walk into the school amidst all the change and still have that feeling of, I've been here before, this is what I've done.
Back in November, I spoke with Dale Lambert, the Student Services Director for the Great Falls Public Schools District. Now, Dale has since retired from that position. Congratulations, Dale. But his message remains the same. There's a lack of paraprofessionals in the Great Falls Public Schools District. There's over 970 students in these special ed programs, but only 160 teachers, staff, nurses, people that make these programs run. In fact, there's still currently 15 openings the district is looking to fill. In Great Falls, Matt Holzaffel, MTN News.
The district will also be addressing needs and challenges on an individual basis and talking with parents to see what they think their students' biggest needs are. Well, another hot, dry day across the region, and fire conditions will continue into the weekend. Here's Elizabeth Copeland with a first look at your forecast.
Good afternoon to you. A little different out there today than it was this time yesterday. We were dealing with some severe storms that have now moved out as of last night, really leaving us with dry conditions and some blue sky out there over Opportunity Bank ICAM in the capital city. Just a few clouds around, none of those producing rain. And we're going to see some really dry air continue to fill in over our area this weekend. So we'll see a lot of the blue skies. We're also going to see a shift in wind, bringing in some wildfire smoke from the west. So some pretty heavy wildfire smoke filling in the skies, especially across parts of the High Line like Cut Bank and Havre this evening, even seeing some of that trickle down into Great Falls and Helena as well. So just because the wildfire smoke map has the heavy wildfire smoke across the High Line doesn't mean we won't be seeing it on the horizon, especially in Great Falls and the northeast corner even. So our air quality has taken a dive as well because of that smoke from other states. We're at moderate for parts of the High Line where that heavy wildfire smoke is, but we continue tracking those blue skies coming up here shortly.
It is peak fire season here in Montana, which means volunteer fire departments are staying busy, but many of them rely on donations to stay afloat. As MTN's Zach Shermley explains, the pandemic has forced many to cut costs.
With the pandemic, a lot has changed in Cascade County, but one thing Montanans can always count on: fire season. Cascade County Commissioners approved Stage 1 fire restrictions at a special meeting Friday morning after consulting with the County Fire Council. No fireworks or campfires outside of campsites will be allowed until further notice from the commission. Open burning was already prohibited.
I'm not real big on these restrictions, but I think we have to listen to our volunteer fire chiefs. They're the ones who have to deal first and foremost with these.
The move comes after a 100-acre grassland fire burned on Bootlegger Trail outside Great Falls last weekend.
That could have erupted into something very serious up in that area and spread.
It was kind of exciting there for a moment.
No major structural damage was reported and no people and livestock were hurt, all thanks to the quick response of a team of volunteer fire departments, many of them from rural areas. The Sun Prairie Rural Volunteer Fire Department, one of many volunteer fire departments fighting the Bootlegger Trail fire this last weekend. Now, it's peak fire season here in Montana, so the hot temperatures, the wind, they're not going to let up. But because of the pandemic, donations to these volunteer fire departments out in rural areas, they're barely trickling in.
We're not able to host our in-house or in-hall or community fundraisers where we bring people in. Generally it's either through a spaghetti feed or a pancake supper. Bring people in, feed them, and then make donations that way. We're not able to do that due to the current restrictions that we're under.
Normally, rural volunteer fire departments rely on in-person fundraisers,
i.e. we've done chili feeds.
But the pandemic has made those fundraisers all but impossible. Out here at the Vaughn Volunteer Fire Department, a similar story with donations lagging, new equipment put on hold, and fundraisers rescheduled.
We're supposed to do an Indian taco feed this spring, late to spring, and because of COVID, ended up having to cancel it. A lot of those funds go to, some of the niceties of t-shirts, hats, jackets. Sometimes it's a little bit more important with purchasing lights, sirens, hoses.
Officials tell MTN News the fire was started by someone shooting tannerite, an explosive rifle target not allowed under the Stage 1 fire restrictions nor the ban on open burning.
Certainly we can stop people from being foolish.
As wildfires rage and rural fire departments stretch their resources, commissioners urged residents of Cascade County to make good choices when it comes to fire safety.
We cannot afford to have man-caused fires.
In Great Falls, Zach Shermley, MTN News.
If you're wondering how much money a water tender costs and how much donations the Sun Prairie Volunteer Fire Department needs to buy one, you can visit us online.
Moving forward, Montana and 44 other states will be expected to pay a quarter of the state's National Guard response to the pandemic. MTN's John Riley has the governor's reaction and how Montana will cover those costs.
Since March, the Montana National Guard has been activated for a federal mission to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. The mission has been fully funded by FEMA under Title 32, but beginning Friday, the federal government wants a 25% copay. Earlier this week, Governor Bullock called the decision unprecedented.
All the time that they're on federal missions, that's paid 100% by the federal government. They've said that states will end up paying 25% of the cost of the National Guard, and the federal government will be picking up 75%. Unprecedented when it comes to being on Title 32 orders.
The original order from President Trump excluded Texas and Florida from having to pay the 25%. Arizona, California, and Connecticut were added to that list a couple weeks ago. The decision to provide full funding to only select states has raised questions and concerns on how the Trump administration is distributing federal aid during the pandemic. While 4 of the fully funded states are currently some of the worst impacted by COVID, Connecticut only reported 1 more case than Montana on Thursday. Bullock says the National Guard have filled invaluable roles during the pandemic, ones the state can't afford to lose.
To the extent that the state does need to pick up 25% of it, though, we'll use those CARES Act dollars because we need to continue to have the men and women of the National Guard providing assistance here.
Reporting from Helena, John Riley, MTN News.
Coming up, fundraising for the governor's race. We're taking a closer look at where the money is coming from. Stay with us.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching the MTN 530 News.
Welcome back. Republican Greg Gianforte continues to have a huge fundraising lead over Democrat Mike Cooney in Montana's race for governor.
But as MTN's Mike Dennison reports, when you take out Gianforte's own substantial personal contribution, it's not quite as lopsided.
Here's a closer look at where the money is coming from in the 2020 contest for governor.
Through last weekend, Greg Gianforte had raised $2.8 million from donors for his gubernatorial campaign. And Democrat Mike Cooney, he's taken in about $1.8 million. Both men are getting plenty of money from fellow Montanans. For Gianforte, it's almost 80% of his donations, $2.2 million. And for Cooney, it's around 72%, or $1.3 million. The race also is getting attention from donors across the country, for it's one of the only competitive gubernatorial races in the nation. Cooney has donors from all 50 states, and Gianforte has donors from every state except Hawaii. While Gianforte has been the fundraising leader for most of this race, Cooney actually raised more from donors than did Gianforte in the past 2 months. Cooney raised $726,000 since mid-July, while Gianforte took in about $582,000 from donors during the period. But the biggest difference in this fundraising contest, of course, is Gianforte's personal contributions. In addition to the $2.8 million he's raised from donors, Gianforte has loaned or contributed almost $2.6 million of his own money to his campaign. That pushes his overall total to $5.4 million, or 3 times what Cooney has raised. And Gianforte's campaign has already spent $5 million, including $1.5 million on media buys in the past 2 months. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Libertarian Lyman Bishop of Kalispell is also in the race. He's raised $17,500 for his campaign, including about $10,000 from his own pocket.
Besides a little wildfire smoke on the horizon, we're looking at a very dry and sunny weekend. We track a weak cold front moving through coming up after the break.
Get Storm Tracker weather starts now with Chief Meteorologist Elizabeth Copeland.
Welcome back on this Friday evening where we've got some history possibly going to be made, especially this weekend and early next week. And that comes a little further from our area in the Gulf. So if you had on your 2020 bingo card 2 hurricanes simultaneously in the Gulf, go ahead and get the marker ready to check off, because we are looking at a tropical storm Laura and still a tropical depression 14, both just off the Gulf to the southeast, but the tracks are right through the Gulf later on this weekend, early next week, both expected to be at some point a hurricane at the same time in the Gulf. Category 1 for both of these before making landfall about Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. So we've got a lot of activity in the Atlantic, not just these 2 storms, but we're looking at a lot of activity for the rest of the season as well. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on the tropics. And in our area, very different story. Not too much rain at all. Very dry air actually settling in our area after the cold front moved through yesterday, sparking some severe storms, pretty much widespread all the way from Helena, Great Falls, all the way to Glasgow a little later yesterday evening. So that activity has diminished, leaving us mostly dry this afternoon. We're looking at relative humidities down to 20% or lower in most areas, which is very dry air. So that cold front kicked out all of our moisture. Dry air is left in the forecast, and it's going to stick around these next few days as well. So it's 88 right now. Have a blue sky out of our U.S. Bank ICAM in Great Falls, pointing up there, 17-mile-per-hour gusts. That dew point